Hello there, my name is Lynn Donovan, and I am the theologian in residence for the Circle of Friends at St. Andrews in Picton. I'm going to begin my reflections this morning with reading to you a quote from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings trilogy. It may be familiar to you. "I wish it need not have happened in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." Those words feel very timely, do they not? In the midst of this pandemic season, in the midst of how history is unfolding in the country to the south of us. And so I read those lines on the day that the church recognizes the feast of St. Francis. St. Francis of Assisi, 12th century Italian monk, famous for his vision of the whole world being a portal to the experience of God, particularly animals, and also recognizing that if we want to be followers of Christ, then we need to walk among the vulnerable. So some of you may also remember the prayer of St. Francis that goes, "Make me an instrument or a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, let me bring your pardon." And I'm thinking a lot about that prayer, St. Francis, particularly the first line, "Make me a channel of your peace." And I think in the past, theologians have focused on the word peace in that first line. But throughout this week, as our lives become more and more like an episode out of the Twilight Zone, I've been thinking about the word channel. Now, channel isn't a word that theologians think about very much. It's kind of considered the word that belongs to the occult or the New Age folk, but I think it is a powerful word that is worth considering, particularly during this season. So we know that this season already has facilitated a great deal of fear and anxiety, and rightly so. This pandemic has reached into every corner of our lives and every corner of our foundational institutions, the way that we do business, the way that we do education. And while at the same time finding a lot of those things wanting, it's also placed so many more people in vulnerable positions. And so this fear, and like I say, my claim to fame was not watching the nightly news for about 12 weeks. Well, let me tell you, I've been watching it lately. Nothing like the nightly news to instill a little bit of fear and anxiety. And I think what happens when fear and anxiety is in the water in which we swim, just by osmosis, we get very often carried away by that water. And so it is daily practice, maybe even hourly practice, where we may need to catch ourselves and respond to the world around us from a different place, rather than mirroring the fear and the anxiety around us. And so I wonder about that line, "Make me a channel of your peace." And I wonder, regardless of what your perspective of God is, whether you're a theist or a pantheist or an atheist or agnostic, if it isn't an invitation to recognize how intentional we need to be, particularly during this time, that we are instruments, vehicles, portals to another way of being. So I guess if you look at the world around us, everybody's channeling something. So I guess our decision is, what is it that we want to channel? And if we recognize that in our imperfect complexity as human beings, that we are constantly going to default to fear or envy or greed or anxiety or isolationism, if those are our defaults, particularly during times like this, then how do we create rituals, reminders that we in fact are invited to take a moment, open our hearts to different energy, vision, spirit, so that we might be among those who are channeling peace, goodwill, generosity, and kindness. And I think too, a vision for justice and care of the vulnerable, as well as a sense of oneness and therefore profound love of the creation. Make me a channel of your peace. I think that prayer of St. Francis is so profoundly timely, as are the words of Tolkien. We're kind of every day, every moment of every day at a fork in the road. It's reminiscent of that indigenous story where the boy asks the grandfather how he is to live, and the grandfather says, well, we have two people in us. They're like two wolves. One is generous and kind and thoughtful and bold and brave, and the other one represents all the other parts of us. And the child responds, well, grandfather, how do I know, or how can I live out of this higher, better, finer self? To which the grandfather responds, well, it depends which ones you feed. So the Christian tradition has suggested that we are vehicles of all that can be good and gracious, bold and brave, just. And so how do we, good friends, as we move through our days, challenging days, days that Tolkien knew about because he lived through the Second World War and was familiar with another despot, how do we find that place and remember and seek to be and commit ourselves to be channels of peace, of shalom, of a larger, more generous vision for this planet and all that depend on its life? This is the task of Sabbath. Rest, mindfulness. I wish you good Sabbath as you ponder these things and you connect with those places where peace and justice reign within your own hearts and spirits.